The rain came down in sheets that October morning, turning the Chicago streets into rivers of gray. Sarah Mitchell stood at the bus stop, designer heels in hand, barefoot on the cold concrete. Her phone dead, her wallet gone, and her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Just 3 hours earlier, she'd been in a board meeting discussing quarterly profits. Now she was stranded 20 miles from home, looking like any other desperate soul trying to get through another day. She didn't notice him at first, the man in the worn jacket and faded jeans, holding a thermos of coffee that probably cost less than the latte she'd abandoned at the cafe where her purse was stolen. But he noticed her. He noticed the way she shivered, the way she kept checking her phone as if willing it to come back to life, the way her eyes darted nervously at every passing bus she couldn't board. "Miss?" His voice was gentle, almost apologetic. "You need bus fare?" Sarah looked up, meeting the kindest brown eyes she'd ever seen. There was no pity in them, no judgment, just simple human concern. She opened her mouth to refuse, pride rising in her throat like bile, but the words wouldn't come. The truth was, she did need help. Desperately. Yes, I was robbed. My wallet, my phone charger, everything. Her voice cracked, betraying emotions she'd spent years learning to bury in boardrooms and negotiations. The man, she'd later learn his name was, Marcus reached into his pocket without hesitation. His fingers emerged with a crumpled $5 bill and some change. She watched, transfixed, as he counted it out in his palm. $7.40. He pressed it all into her hand. "Take it. That should get you where you need to go." "I can't take all your money," Sarah protested, suddenly aware that this might be all he had. His jacket was threadbare at the elbows, his boots worn at the heels. "What about you?" Marcus smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I'll walk. It's only 4 miles. I could use the exercise anyway." 4 miles. In this rain, Sarah felt something crack open inside her chest, some wall she'd built over 15 years of climbing corporate ladders and crushing competitors. When was the last time someone had sacrificed anything for her without wanting something in return? "I'll pay you back," she said firmly. "I promise. Give me your address or your number or—" He was already walking away, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the rain. He turned back just once, that same gentle smile on his face. "Pay it forward instead. Someone else will need it more than me." Then he was gone, disappearing into the gray morning, and Sarah was left standing, with $7.40 in her palm and tears mixing with rain on her face. She made it home eventually, that crumpled $5 bill feeling heavier than any contract she'd ever signed. That night, in her penthouse apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. Not just his kindness, though, that alone would have been remarkable, but the way he'd given without keeping score, without checking his own account balance first, without thinking about what he was losing. It haunted her. For a week, Sarah returned to that bus stop every morning before her driver picked her up for work. She wore different clothes, jeans, simple sweaters, nothing that screamed CEO of a tech company worth $300 million. She waited, hoping, needing to see him again, to thank him, to understand him. On the 8th day, he appeared. "You came back," she breathed, almost afraid he was a figment of her imagination. Marcus looked surprised to see her. "I usually take this route on Fridays. Have you been waiting?" "Every day." Sarah pulled an envelope from her bag. "I wanted to return your money." "With interest." But Marcus stepped back, hands raised. "I told you to pay it forward." "I meant it." "Then have coffee with me, please, just 30 minutes of your time." Something in her voice must have reached him, because he nodded slowly. They ended up at a small diner 3 blocks away, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and bottomless coffee. Sarah had never been anywhere like it. It was perfect. Over weak coffee and toast, Marcus told her about his life. He was a social worker, he explained, working with homeless youth on the South Side. The pay was terrible. The hours worse, but it mattered. He talked about a kid named Deshaun who'd just gotten his GED, about Maria who'd been reunited with her family, about the small victories that most people never saw or cared about. Sarah listened, genuinely listened, for the first time in years. She'd spent so long talking, pitching, commanding, that she'd forgotten how powerful silence could be. How much you could learn about someone by simply paying attention. "What about you?" Marcus asked finally. "What do you do?" Sarah hesitated. This was the moment. She could tell him the truth, that she was Sarah Mitchell, CEO of Tech Vista, that her face had been on the cover of Forbes twice, that she had more money than he'd see in 10 lifetimes. Or she could lie. Keep this bubble intact a little longer. "I work in tech," she said carefully. "Nothing exciting. Mostly just meetings and emails." It wasn't exactly a lie, just not the whole truth. They met again the next week. And the week after that, coffee became dinner. Dinner became long walks along the lake shore, talking about everything and nothing. Sarah found herself laughing more than she had in years, letting her guard down in ways that would have terrified her 6 months ago. Marcus never asked about her salary or her apartment or what kind of car she drove. He asked about her dreams instead, her fears, what made her happy. She fell in love with him slowly, then all at once. It happened on a Tuesday evening in November, watching him teach a group of teenagers how to fill out job applications. The patience in his voice, the genuine belief that these kids could make it. It broke her heart open and put it back together in a new configuration. But the lie was eating her alive. 3 months into their relationship, Sarah knew she had to tell him. The weight of her deception felt like concrete in her chest. So she invited him to her place, her real place, for the first time. "This is where you live?" Marcus stood in the marble lobby of her building, looking around with wide eyes. Sarah's stomach twisted. "There's something I need to tell you." The elevator ride to the penthouse lasted 34 seconds. It felt like 34 years. When the doors opened, directly into her apartment, 4,000 square feet of floor-to-ceiling, windows and designer furniture, Marcus went very still. "I should have told you from the beginning," Sarah said, words tumbling out in a rush. "That day at the bus stop, I wasn't lying about being robbed, but I wasn't honest about who I am. I'm Sarah Mitchell, CEO of Tech Vista. I have money, Marcus, a lot of it, and I've been lying to you for 3 months." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Marcus walked to the windows, looking out at the city spread below them like scattered diamonds. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "Why?" "Because for the first time in my life, someone saw me. Not my bank account, not my company, not what I could do for them, just me. And I was terrified that if you knew the truth, it would change everything." Marcus turned to face her. "You're right. It does change everything." He paused, and Sarah felt her heart shatter. "It makes your sacrifice that day even greater." She blinked. "What?" "You stood at that bus stop in the rain, vulnerable and scared, and you let a stranger help you. Do you know how much courage that took? How hard it is for successful people to admit they need help?" Marcus crossed the room, taking her hands in his. "You could have called your office, your assistant, anyone, but you waited for the bus like everyone else. You accepted $7.40 like it was a fortune, because in that moment it was." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "You're not angry?" "I'm hurt you didn't trust me with the truth sooner. But angry? No, because I understand. The world teaches people like you to hide, to armor up, to trust no one." He cupped her face gently. "But Sarah, I didn't fall in love with your wallet. I fell in love with the woman who cried over a stranger's kindness. The woman who came back to that bus stop every morning just to say thank you. The woman who listens to kids talk about their dreams like they matter, because to you they do." "They do matter," Sarah whispered. "You taught me that. You taught me that everything I built means nothing if I'm not using it to help people." In the weeks that followed, Sarah made changes, real ones. She started a foundation funded with $50 million dedicated to programs for homeless youth. She hired Marcus to run it at a salary that finally matched his worth. She began showing up not just with money, but with time, volunteering alongside him, learning the names and stories of kids the world had forgotten. The media called it a publicity stunt at first. They didn't see the late nights she spent reviewing grant applications, or the tears she shed over stories of children sleeping in cars, or the way she fought her own board when they questioned her commitment to charity work that doesn't affect the bottom line. But Marcus saw. He saw everything. A year after that rainy morning at the bus stop, Marcus took Sarah back to that exact spot. The same cracked sidewalk, the same faded bench, the same gray Chicago sky threatening rain. "I gave you $7.40, he said softly, pulling a small box from his pocket. "You gave me everything that mattered. Your trust, your heart, your genuine desire to make the world better." He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring. "Marry me, Sarah, not because of what you have, but because of who you are." Sarah looked at the ring, probably the least expensive piece of jewelry she'd ever owned, and knew it was the most valuable, because it came with no strings attached, no board approval needed, no quarterly projections, just love, pure and uncomplicated. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Years later, when people asked Sarah about the turning point in her life, she never mentioned the Forbes covers or the company milestones. She talked about a rainy morning and $7.40, about a man who gave everything he had to a stranger, expecting nothing in return, about learning that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the lives you touch and the love you give freely. She kept that crumpled $5 bill in her wallet always, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest ripples, that vulnerability is strength, that love finds you when you least expect it, in the most unlikely places. And every morning, as she and Marcus worked together at the foundation that had now helped thousands of young people build better futures, Sarah remembered what it felt like to be helpless and alone. She remembered the hand that reached out without hesitation, offering everything. She remembered that humanity isn't found in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments when we choose each other over ourselves, when we give not because we can afford to, but because we can't afford not to. That's the real story. Not about a CEO and a social worker, but about two souls who found each other in the rain and chose every day after to keep choosing love, kindness, and the beautiful, messy work of making the world a little bit better, one $7.40 gesture at a time.